hosting.
You're in charge.
Hey everyone, we're live now with the yard sign. We were going to move to every week. We had some incidents come up this week that we'll get into. We are going to try and start doing once a week now at 7 p.m. on Mondays. For right now, obviously, it's been 2 weeks, so we've got a lot to talk about today. We're kind of going to go over everyone's topics. I'm going to take a second to introduce everybody. Our panel today, we've got to my right here, we've got Jodie, Lopes.
Hi, y'all. My topic for the day today is going to be the minimum wage bill.
And then we've got Anibal, Cabrera.
Hi, everyone. My topics today will be Puerto Rico and anything in regards to the Federal Reserve.
And then we have our pro TV guest today, Cassie.
Hi.
Do we go last name still, or do we leave it at
First
Cassie?
names only.
Okay, first names only. I forgot. Yeah, I just want to make sure.
So I'm blending in.
Just blending in.
camouflage.
Her second appearance on
Yeah,
the
so
streaming.
just so you know, we gave Johnny a lot of grief a couple weeks ago when he did Bay News 9. So Cassie today was featured on News Channel 10,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
WTSP.
TSP. Yeah.
While that's awesome. You did a great job too. So if
Thanks.
you do
Yeah,
follow
you
her
look
on
wonderful.
Facebook, even though you're not, she kind of hides that. If you can find her, then I would go and watch that. She did a great job today.
Thanks.
Don't give
You're
the
so
internet
sweet.
a challenge.
So we're gonna start on all the
Did you do
topics
your
we talked
topic?
about today.
Mueller. I'd say Mueller.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Mueller. Yeah, we've got that whole report and everything. And then my topic today is, and I guess it already happened so long ago, but what I wanted to talk about was this whole send her back chant type thing that's going on in the Republican Party right now with I'm not going to call them the squad because I think the squad is a ridiculous name.
Yeah.
But the beef that's going on between our president and the four fresh faces of the Democratic Party, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But we can start out first talking with Jodie. I'll let her kind of bring up what she wants to talk about with the minimum wage bill.
So I just wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about the minimum wage bill because there were a couple parts of it that I was a little confused with, and there seemed to, for a day or two when it kind of first happened, be a lot of back and forth and a lot of conversation about why are Republicans not really talking about this, because I don't think that we were seeing Republicans come out and saying for it and against it other than just kind of very briefly and not really having any information on it. So I kind of just wanted to talk about that a little bit because I am not sure what I really think about it. And I think that I'm still relatively confused about it, but I think that the Democrats are using it as a platform for 2020. So I think it's important that we understand what it is that's changing and whether it was a win or it wasn't a win. So just to kind of recap on it a little bit, if people hadn't kind of followed it a little. So it's going to raise the federal minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour, but over the course of multiple years, so it will not reach $15 an hour until 2025. There's also a provision in the bill that about halfway through sets a time for it to be reevaluated and looked at and see what the impact was of going to the 15. So I think that we'll have another chance to see if we need to do a correction or if it's actually working for us at that point. Something that I found very interesting about the bill is that it also increases that server and tipped wage that we have. It also increases that to $15. So I was perplexed by that piece of it because right now, you know, your servers and your tipped workers are essentially getting half of the federal minimum wage, and that is what encourages us to tip people. So I'm not sure I'm going to tip anymore in 2025.
Do you guys want to expand on that a little bit about what your thoughts? I mean, because this minimum wage thing's been going on for a long time here,
Yeah.
and I think it's probably safe to say that $7.25 is very low, or whatever it may be. You know, I think
but very low for what? I mean, is it someone living in New York? Yeah, it's extremely low.
I think it's low no matter where you live.
In South Dakota or someone living in maybe more
I don't
I think
parts.
everywhere $7.25 is too low right now.
I think it's very low. I think $15 an hour is a lot. I mean,
high.
that's
Yeah.
over double where
You
we're at
understand
right
the
now, which is kind
purpose
of
of the middle of the minimum wage is to have a base, to have a starting job,
Yeah.
to allow for companies to be able to budget that accordingly, and for there to be that first step for a lot of people. that first job for a lot of people, they're very much younger, they have no experience, they need something to get in, and so that's usually the minimum wage to get started. Do I think the minimum wage needs to be a living wage? I don't think it.
It was never intended.
It was
to be
never
a living
intended
wage.
to be a living wage. You weren't expected to raise a family and grow your net worth with the minimum wage.
So people that are like, I should be able to live on this wage for the rest of my life, it's not fair. Yeah. That's not what the original purpose of it was. Absolutely. Like, I agree.
Yeah. I think this gets a lot more fire in it than what it really needs to. Because does anyone know how many people actually are nationally are on the minimum wage?
No, do you?
I don't know those figures. I
have no idea, but I would assume that there's a decent amount of people that are probably under. I mean, definitely under the $10 mark.
Well, yeah, that's a different conversation.
Because each state can do its own minimum wage as well. So we got to think about that, right? That's just the federal. Yeah. Each state is a little different, and there weren't very many states that only paid actually the federal minimum wage. But I don't know how many people are on minimum wage, but I do know that they thought that 3.7 million people would lose their jobs. So I'd say it's at least 3.7.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So I want to kind of probably move us around a little bit because one of the things I heard, this is something that AOC was talking about a couple days ago. She was kind of going on the same point where they were pushing people to all pay their interns. And it's the same concept, is that you have these people who are in college or it's their first job or something like that, and they're trying to push right now that they pay their interns, so everybody should pay their interns. And it's almost the same thing. And I think that one of the worst things that we can do in this country is to make it harder and harder to get people into those entry-level jobs. And, you know, I've dealt with this because I've hired quite a few interns for my company, and we've had, you know, if you had to pay them, and then you had to pay them a minimum a $15 an hour wage, you would never hire an intern. You would hire somebody.
You'd hire somebody with experience.
Hire someone with experience. I mean, $15 an hour is a lot when, especially nowadays, when you can go on the internet and find someone to do it for significantly cheaper out of the country. It's just one of those things where it's like, if you can pay your interns, like, great, fantastic, do it, please. Like, pay your interns. It's very difficult to take an internship in like DC or New York or something like that, and you know, you have to have some sort of money to come to be able to do that kind of stuff. But for the rest of the country, who's, you know, your small businesses, I think that one of the other things that kind of gets lost in this is the size of the companies. There's no way that a company like the majority of small companies where you have under 10 employees are able to meet a $15 an hour minimum wage the same way that Amazon can meet a $15 minimum hourly wage. So it's like, to me, that stuff is really the details. Like $15 an hour is like a great tagline that people can scream about, and it's a good like one-liner. But at the end of the day, like, you need to be able to, if we're gonna go this direction in any way of raising minimum wage, then there needs to be discussion over what gets done at the internship level, at the apprenticeship level, and then at businesses that are certain sizes, and it needs to be scaled, because there's just no way that these overall, like, these overarching policies make any sense for all businesses.
But the people that you're hurting the most when it comes to this kind of increase in the minimum wage are the ones that are in most need of these entry-level jobs. The individuals that do not have the experience, do not have the ability they're going to need to be able to find a job that's close to them. They're going to need to be able to find something that will pay and that they can rely on. And so I pulled up the statistics real quick. In 2017, the number of individuals that were working in the minimum wage is 500,000 people. 542,000 people in the United States out of 80.4 million people working in the United States are in the minimum wage category. And now, of course, that fluctuates.
In the federal minimum wage.
Yeah, well, that they get paid the $7.25.
Yeah.
So that goes up and goes down, and goes up as you get into better jobs and everything else. But I was with a client today that they could not find someone to be their office secretary for $12 an hour. They couldn't find anyone that was that they could have confidence in. And so what did they do? They raised it $2 more.
Yeah.
So they could find someone that was qualified. They could find someone that they felt comfortable with. But that's the purpose of a tight labor market, is to increase that forces companies to increase to increase their wages so that they have to compete for labor. And that's the whole part of this. Again, I understand the concept of having a minimum wage. I don't like the idea at all, because you're making an artificial number that shouldn't matter.
You know, I've heard arguments before about people that will say that if we didn't have any minimum wage, you would have, I think there's two scenarios. Basically, you have people serfdom, where nobody's getting paid
Yeah.
anything and that's the only thing they can do is basically for food. And then you've got the other people. There's other people that think that, well, no, if you kind of reduce the minimum wage or let it be more of a free market type situation, then what would end up happening is that $7 people would find out that is too low, and the actual cost of hiring somebody is going to be more than that, or else they're not going to be able to find anybody in the demand for jobs. So it's an interesting conversation to have, because we've had a minimum wage for so long that even as a Republican, I tend to be a lot closer towards free market everything. We do have a long history of not paying people anything if there's not a required. We're going to keep meeting that bare minimum. So, to me, I mean, when I hear this kind of conversation, I understand why people don't want to raise it, but I also understand where people come from, where they say like it needs to be a little bit higher, because I don't think it's. It definitely hasn't kept up with inflation. They might say it has, but it hasn't.
I agree but you hit the basic point. No one should be happy at $7.25 an hour.
You should be doing more to get above.
You should be doing more to get above it. And I know that there are not enough programs out there, and education's a big deal, and being able to put yourself in a position to move up above that, but you can get into Publix is a great company that they start you off and you're able to build up in there, and there are other companies that are like that. But again, no one should be satisfied with $7.25.
So was it Talib that said she wanted to do 20?
Yes.
Okay, so I can't wrap my brain around how much. Now I realize this is a bill that's currently happening. What people are running on is like a different topic. But what the Democrats are promising to give away for free with no basis behind it, how they're going to pay for it, is blowing my mind. Number one. Number two, Bernie.
I was going to say, are you going to just list off all the things that are promised? Because I thought that's what you're going to do. It's
have
nuts.
them. Yeah, free college. That would cost $1.89 trillion with a T dollars. They've said free health care for illegal immigrants. We already know that illegal immigrants are $13 billion a year on our taxpayers. Free health care, $32.6 trillion with a T. So if they gave free health care to everyone, that's how much it would cost. Universal child care, Elizabeth Warren was saying $1.2 billion. Now they're saying a $20 minimum wage. The guaranteed income from Yang would be $3 trillion. Reparations, $100 billion. So imagine if all of these things, think about it.
Like they all got implemented tomorrow.
It. So what all the Dems are saying,
from?
and every time one of them is saying, I want to give it away for free, they all go, yeah. They all raise their hand. They're backing each other up. They're all saying, you'll be my vice president. You'll be my vice president.
Yeah.
So if they all agree that all this is going to be given away for free, where is the money coming from?
Well, it's definitely not coming from our budget.
No, they have a rich uncle somewhere, and that's how all this money is going to.
But all rich uncle isn't a Democrat.
Well, if I was also an idiot, this sounds great.
Yeah.
If I was an idiot and I heard $20 minimum wage and all those things for free, that really sounds great.
It does
I can't
sound
blame
great.
these people when they're
What they're
idiots.
doing.
I'm sorry, but when they're idiots and they're saying that sounds
Because
great, I feel like it sounds great too.
We've come so far away from people being able to understand where this money comes from. It used to be that
It's imaginary money now.
No, yeah,
It's all
it's completely
electronic
imaginary. It's not
somewhere else.
stamps anymore. It's not somebody actually physically handing you money and saying like this is from the community. We've pulled it together to help you out because you're struggling. It's so far who cares about stealing from the federal government at this point? There's how many trillions of dollars in debt? Everyone's to themselves what's a couple $100 to me every year or every month or
but
whatever.
that's the thing, though.
It's so far away.
Americans are so comfortable right now when they don't realize that the Democrats paying off college tuitions for people. That's not the government paying off. That's me paying off your student loan. That's me buying your house that people are talking about. That's me. paying for
I don't care
reparations.
about your free
Warren's
child
universal
care. I
health
don't
care
have
plan.
kids.
Warren's universal health care plan. You're taxed if you make over $50 million a year. You know what Hubert Herver's slogan was when he ran? A chicken in every pot, a car in every garage. You know when he became president? A year before the Great Depression. So he ran saying, take it all for free. Take it. It's free. I'm going to give it to you. And then a year later, people were waiting in lines for maybe a bowl of soup for the day. And nobody's mentioned yet how Bernie has increased his minimum wage to $15 an hour and cut his people's
I was
Hours.
just about to say that when you brought up
is
Bernie was to pay for
fascinating.
it, they're working less, so no difference.
So Bernie now
can't.
understands economics, I'm assuming.
It's the
no, I
first time
still
he's
don't
had a
think
real
that means he
job.
understands economics. I'm pretty
He's had
sure.
a-
The problem is he's still not the one signing those paychecks. So
No,
it doesn't
of course
even
not.
matter.
It doesn't matter.
Because again, but that's the thing. Those taxes that need to be paid, or those all those debt, that debt is being paid by you and by Jake and by that's all of our incomes that are going to be taxed.
Yeah.
Everyone
And
that's
it's not,
watching.
and I mean, like, let's take Bernie Sanders' example here. It's that he makes how many millions of dollars a year? I mean, he releases tax returns. Like, he's in that 1% that he complains about. He could do exactly
He
what
is.
he's asking everybody else to
could
do.
pay
He
off
could
all the
he
college
could
debt.
take a $100,000 cut this year and pay all of his employees $15, $20, $50 an
AOC's
hour if he wants to.
wanting a raise for herself.
I'm telling you right now,
Well,
someone
She
that
couldn't afford to live in D.C.
someone
in
that
her
is
fancy apartment.
someone that is in the accounting and tax world, I will not give you that myself that classification. However, if they want to do that, they could do a simple TurboTax and pay exactly without any of the deductions or anything, and they would see how much exactly they would be paying. And they're never going to do that because they hire these 30 accountants to do their taxes, so they don't have to pay the amount of taxes that other people have to pay.
So I do have a question just before we get off of this topic, as I do want to know how you guys feel about that tipped wage worker thing, because I tip because they don't make minimum wage.
would
So
just
how
be a
does this
huge
change
cultural
our
shift.
economy?
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah,
That's what
it
they
really
do in
is.
Europe, you know that.
Because
Yeah,
because
well, they
if so-
pay them, but then the
Trust
service is
me,
absolute crap.
I
So
haven't
is
had
absolute
good
crap.
service
that's
in
the
Europe
problem.
in such a long time.
It's horrible. I actually get physically offended when I'm there.
You break out in hives.
Like, I actually have to go up and like
Physical offense.
hand them a credit card and say, I just want to pay you and leave here.
Oh, this sounds horrible.
Like,
This-
it's-
Yeah.
The
it's
stories
so
that are running
bad.
in my
You've
head
told
right
me.
now. Yeah, I'm standing in front of Prada
It's
trying
true.
to pay for something.
You
also-
can't
They
buy
won't let me
things.
get it.
It's also a culture in some of those countries that meals take longer. But
This is
you
after
are
the
right.
meal. Like,
You are right.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
cook
I
the
agree.
food, bring it to me. But I mean,
Yeah, there's an
Take my
expectation.
money.
We have an incredible expectation in this country of how fast we want service. It's like it's so fast.
And how much attention.
and the level to which it's delivered.
Which
to
is
me.
detrimental to us on the opposite side of that being the customer. The dynamic between the customer and the server
Completely
are completely different. And it changes when you no longer have the incentive out there. However, you do have those examples of those individuals that get paid more when they're serving everything else, that the quality does get better. So it is a cultural thing, which means
Yeah.
that there are some examples of when it does get better, and others is when it completely goes down. There's a restaurant
But you still don't have to. But if you, I guess it's not really so much for me the service, but are we as a society, we're going to stop tipping people when we know that they make a normal wage or a $15. If I don't
As we
tip the
should. If they're making
firefighter that
15.
burns my house, that when my house is burning, and he makes $15 an hour, I'm definitely not tipping my waiter.
You know what I don't like though? I don't like how we've started adding tipping into receipts for things that like Starbucks
Like,
or
don't
something
deserve
like
a
that.
tip.
It's
Yeah.
like
Your whole job is to make the
or if
coffee.
you're like, we just went to somewhere where they got
You order at the
where
counter?
you get one single beer, or you get one single like water, and they literally hand you the water or something like that, and they're like, and it's like a tip thing, and you're like,
I'm not tipping that.
I'm like, I mean, I watched you do that, and I mean, is that a tip? I mean, that's not an entire hour worth of service. I mean, so we
Right.
started adding this tip thing into like all
Everything.
kinds of different things. But you
Places
know
where
what?
you order
But
food
we're
at the counter,
we're
that's
missing
about
one of the things I'll say with the minimum wage, and I know that we kind of need to move on from this topic before we go too far, is that we end up subsidizing the minimum wage situation no matter what, though. But whether it comes from welfare, or from if it comes from like when at Walmart, like the subsidies and like all those types of things that
Yes, or
that
infrastructure. Our
Everything's-
country's getting old.
yeah, but all
mean,
that
we-
stuff is subsidizing that $7 an hour, and so it does come from other places. I wanted to kind of bring that up before we go, and so it is a very extensive economic conversation to have, but right now, like I think again, like I think we came to the conclusion, like $15 an hour is a lot, and it's a big jump to do, from $7.25 to $15 an
remember
hour.
our first jobs. Could you imagine if we were getting $15 an hour?
I
at
made
that
$15
first
an
job?
hour to start working.
So-
Cash under the table.
Well, talking
Thanks,
about
Jeff.
keeping up with inflation, teaching doesn't keep up with inflation
even know
either.
what your first job
So
I folded sweatshirts in a back room.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's getting worse and worse.
And
All right,
we're done.
So let's move on to the next topic.
Mueller.
You want to go Mueller
You wanna do
next?
Mueller?
Tell us about it, Cassie.
No, I mean,
No,
I don't really have a wrap up. It's like pretty self-explanatory.
So I was
It was-
honestly, I'm
I just
so
wanna
mad.
talk about
I'm
it.
genuinely like when you guys were like, we got to talk about the Mueller investigation. I'm like,
Oh, I could talk about it till I'm blue in the face. I just don't want to give the summary because it's pretty
but
complicated
this is
and
the
I'm not that
we're
smart.
not gonna get. I'm not giving a summary because there is an entire podcast dedicated to the details of the Mueller report. I forget what it's
One,
called.
And I'm going to
there's
need you to
probably-
check the
oh, you mean that's just the
investigation.
I'm
name
saying
of
that
it?
is like it's like
The
Mueller
investigators
report
of the
update or
investigations.
something like that, and it's like it's not a political podcast. It's solely on the investigation and everything that happens with it. And they've been talking about it every day for 2 years on TV. Go if you want to go catch up on the Mueller report. Go find somewhere else to do
Refer
it.
to
But
the
right now, what I'll tell you
investigation.
is that
Can you please
We have to
say
at
the
least
question
talk about
again?
how much of a
Can you
failure
please
it
say the-
was, how
Oh.
painful it was to watch him. I mean, there's a few things we have
So
to
we
talk
can
about.
talk- we can talk about a few
I
things.
felt like
Hold on.
my grandfather was there being grilled, and I'm like, I feel so
I felt
bad.
sorry for
I
him.
felt like it
he's
was-
forgetting what he evidently did not write. And it's
At
like,
all.
He didn't write
Yeah.
it.
no, he didn't write it. And then I'm like, and
Which you
thinking to
could've just
myself,
said.
thinking to myself, if I had a book report due, and I asked my mom to do it,
Yes.
I would at least read the book report on the bus
He's not
on the
reading
way
that
to
thing.
work, on the way to school.
So
So he didn't read it at all.
I
I
do
felt
wanna
like
start-
it was a mock trial at the assisted living home. Like,
Well, real quick though, before we really start bashing this guy, he was a
said no
Marine.
jokes.
He was a
Yeah.
Marine
Okay, yes.
and an amazing neutral. People chose him because he was so neutral. I'm sure he's a brilliant man.
Well, and a lot of people
So
are
I just
saying
want to
that-
start
He
this
looks
off by
bad on
saying that what
TV.
we're about to say is only about that one day, but we have all the most respect
No,
for
he's
Mueller
been
'cause he
a
was an
long
amazing man who
time
served our country
government
well.
government server.
Yes, he was a Marine.
However, he was put in a situation that there was never going to be a positive outcome
Correct.
in this situation. He
no
was
matter
telling
which
people,
way.
"Do not put me in front of a mic because you're not gonna like what I said. You're not gonna like what I say." And I was, and when he was saying this to people, and then they tried to give him an out like a week before with the White House saying, "Look, you cannot speak. That's perfectly fine. You have that legal basis." But the fact that they allowed him to get, the Democrats thought he was going to be the knight in shining armor, and like he was going to save the day. He is going to tell them that Trump is everything that they think it is.
They knew he wasn't, though. That's why their questions were the way they were.
Exactly.
All their questions were quotes from the report with a yes or no question. Quotes from the report with a yes or no question. Because they
think that's
all
why we didn't get very
knew
much out
he
of it.
wasn't going to
But this
say
is why I
anything
hate
more.
this is why I hate talking about this topic and everything like that because I'm like,
We're talking about it, Jake. We have 12 minutes.
I
left.
know. But that's why it bothers me so much because it's like I have to sit around and listen to the updates about something that there's no news here. There's no news.
No
here.
news.
Nothing was discovered. Nothing big has happened. So like it was the same thing before this. I don't know if,
But I
if
just
it was.
want to beat a dead horse about how it was no news. So there's more,
There's more to-
evidence on the internet about how it was no news because everyone's
Yeah.
clinging on to it like
Well,
it's a
that's
big
what I'm
deal
gonna
and Trump's
say.
guilty and he's not.
That's what I'm gonna say about this
but
is that
guilty
people.
of what?
you know, people
Like, I'm
are
still so
clinging.
lost on guilty on what.
So,
Because I
I-
don't think anybody indicted was guilty
Oh,
of
I have a
anything
response to that, but
related to the investigation,
Did he
right?
sell a baby?
No, no.
I don't know. What happened? What happened at Trump Tower?
So-
Wasn't there something with
Are we
baby-
selling babies?
What I'm gonna
Russian
say,
babies.
Sorry.
Don't get me started. on this.
but that's where it leads up to.
Let Jake finish.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say.
Could they be tan Russian babies? That would be so much better.
All right, we are
From the Black Sea.
This is everything. This is right when Cassie would shut up our show.
I'm sorry.
It is. Keep it
So-
appropriate, Jody.
So, what I'm gonna say though is that people are clinging to this investigation though. So I spent the time. I was somewhere where there was cable news, which I don't have anymore. But I got to see
Millennial.
what the left said, what CNN was saying, whatever they are nowadays, and what the right was saying with Fox News. And if you flip back and forth, I mean, if you do this with any subject, but just like the hope and the clinging that the Democrats still have, they're still talking about the Southern District of New York. They're talking about like, oh, we have these other investigations. They're all like, there's all of a sudden going to be this thing that just like pops out of nowhere, and it's like, and people are clinging to this. And they're
Well,
really,
there probably will be something that pops out of nowhere, but will it be factual and true?
well,
Probably
but,
not.
But something that's going to take, but not. Sorry, well, let me go back a second and say that it's going to be so giant of a discovery that it's enough to impeach the president of the United
yeah,
States.
that's what
and
they're
people are
hoping
hanging to that. And I just talked with one of my good liberal friends last week after this happened, and he's still like, they're going to impeach him, and I'm like, what news are you listening to? That this is what the American
All of
public is
it.
getting to them, that they're like, the impeachment is happening. It's going to happen. It's supposed to happen. And that's the news that they're getting to them. And I feel like we're nowhere close to an impeachment. The numbers aren't there. None of that stuff is happening.
This
Yeah, I
does
just don't
nothing
think
but
it's
prove
open
the point
conversation.
that there literally should be a medical report done of individuals that are so delusional that Trump won, that it's a medical problem. They have like Trump syndrome
with his
of some
bias
But then
kind.
we're just
Media
feeding
because-
into this
blame them?
nonsense.
Because they truly believe he could not have won. There's no way. Something had to happen. We're gonna prove it. He's not. And now you're telling me that the 70 million people that that voted for him. None of that matters, and that we should just redo the election. And that keeps on going on and on and on again, to the point to where I truly thought at the beginning of the summer, you know what, this whole thing cannot last that long. Now we are at the end of summer. I'm like, this is going to push through to 2020. If this pushes through all the way to the election, why would you vote as a Democrat?
You know what I think
Why?
it is?
You've wasted hundreds of millions of dollars on
million.
on investigations that have gone absolutely nowhere.
So what I'll say about that is
You
that
could have paid for college. With that.
But this is the thing. I don't mind an investigation, which I know that a lot of Republicans are like, oh, it's all a witch hunt and everything, like even our president. It's like, oh, it's a big witch hunt. But I don't mind it if we spend money to investigate something when there is a real concern that something at this level took place. I'm okay with an investigation, but I'm also okay with the investigation people being happy with the results that came out of it. And that's not what's happening.
So Charlie Kirk, do you guys follow him on Instagram? He had an amazing clip the other night that I'm going to make an attempt to summarize. But I need to give credit to Charlie Kirk because this was his talk from Turning Point last week. He summarized, and I never understood any of this. Yeah. It was like 6 slides across, but when he summarized it, I watched it like 6 times. It makes so much sense. Basically, Clinton paid for the dossier. The dossier was incredibly corrupt, has hundreds of pages of evidence that it was completely false. But there were 3 people at the head of security, Christie, Giuliani, or Flynn, all who could have been approached talking about the security with Russia. Nobody approached them. Instead, they did a 2-year Mueller investigation, which we now just came to the end of. And out of that, what else they keep saying is these 30 indictments, 30 indictments, 30 indictments, which makes Trump sound guilty. 5 of the people who are all already being punished, none of whom were indicted for anything that had anything to do with Russia. The other 25, Russian citizens.
And just like
which was done,
Russian citizens
this was done in April. Mm-hmm. So 0% of the evidence that has come out of the Mueller report is anything to do with anyone being guilty about Russia. And I have to say, there was the one quote that really shocked me during when they were questioning Mueller, that there was the quote from Trump where he said, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're going to investigate me. I'm effed. And if you read the rest of the paragraph, he goes on to say, because anytime this has ever happened to another president in history, they are unable to get anything else done to help the country. He wasn't saying it because he thought he was effed because he was going to be found guilty.
And I saw that too. And every single article was just cut off right there.
Right there. They don't show you the whole paragraph.
And
it's infuriating.
So again, we have spent 2 years talking about nothing.
That's why I don't want to talk about it.
But people need to hear this side of it, Jake.
Spend 10 minutes.
They need to hear this side of it. I'm yelling, sorry.
I know,
but
I know,
they need to hear the side that's not talking about it.
I'm so bored of the investigation.
But not this side.
But that's the thing, though. It's infuriating that these people are holding multiple hearings on things that matter nothing anymore now that the investigation is over. And now we're going to have investigations on how this truly started. And again, watching the Democrats and the Republicans and the pundits go back and forth on cable news was hilarious, because you had some people who were like, this is a nightmare for the Democrats. No one could spin it any better than, well, he said what he had to say. Like, no one could spin it well.
The one thing they thought they had him on, he came back after lunch and said,
oh yeah, no.
I mean, it couldn't be more clear that
it did not go well for the Democrats. I mean, I think we're seeing that. I mean, it's just all points to why he's going to get reelected in 2020.
And something that I don't see the government doing, and I think it goes back to like how much money and time we spent on this, but in the corporate capitalistic world, when I am in a meeting, I literally count the money of the butts in the seats. Like, I can look at a meeting and it can last 15 minutes and I can say, this meeting's over now because the amount of money in this room is not worth it. And I will cancel it and move on until we have something more productive. But I don't like a problem we have with the government is we just keep going and going and going, and so we don't recognize the money of the butts in the seats.
But this goes back to kind of like a political strategy, because if we weren't talking about this investigation right now, we'd have to talk about the Democratic debates coming up, I think tomorrow or the next day.
Oh my God, they're tomorrow.
And they're an absolute mess.
I didn't know that either.
Exactly. But if we did, so
because we don't know because of.
But if all the attention is spent on the problems within the Democratic Party right now, then that would take up all the news cycle. But we can't spend all our news cycle doing that. So we have to.
It'd be nice if they did.
Have an investigation.
That's why Trump's tweets are so brilliant.
When
I know. They get it out and they get you talking about it.
Every time there's a new tweet, it reaffirms my theory of 4-dimensional chess. I don't know why. Either he's making them go crazy, or he's
He
making them
knows
have to move
exactly
forward
what
to the.
he's doing, and it's such a beautiful.
I don't know.
thing.
I don't know if we want to switch over to the Baltimore situation.
Sure,
That's the most
we can move
recent.
on.
Talking about the
I've said
tweets.
everything I have to say
Yeah,
about
yeah,
this.
we can
Thank you for
reset.
appeasing me, Jake.
No, that's,
I get a 5-minute credit on a future topic, though.
well,
Well, Baltimore was technically your second choice topic, and it's
the
not
way,
on the list.
It's obviously important because everyone's been talking about it for 2 years, every single day. So I understand.
Thank
But
you.
let's move on.
I know. I like you, so it's cool.
Come on, let's start with the hairspray. Okay.
All right. So,
I should play it on
this
the
was
computer.
Cassie. Was this your topic?
No, mine was Mueller,
Oh,
But
okay.
when we
well,
were talking earlier,
I
one
wanted
of
to
the
talk
things
about
you wanted to talk
Baltimore.
about was Baltimore a little bit.
which
so we've
kind of
got some
aligns with
time,
yours because
yeah.
yours
So-
was with the squad.
all right. So I'm gonna go off on a little tangent myself.
Yeah, go.
All right,
We'll
do the
interject.
tangent,
I'm
we're
pushing
good.
start on
Would
the
you like
timer.
a song? Good morning.
I don't need a song or anything, but this is I
always need
want to go back 2 weeks now at this point where we had this whole problem with we talking about Trump's tweeting, where you have this whole mess going on in the Democratic Party where they have to now they have a war between Pelosi and the new 4 young congressmen congresswomen who are all basically arguing for like the heart of the party at this point. There's a power struggle there, and it's a big deal. But instead of us being able to enjoy that and sit back, the president inserted himself with a tweet about all of them going back to their own countries. And when you do that, it's just one of those that it frustrates me. It frustrates me a lot when I see that type of stuff. And I found this quote after this happened, and then the next day you had the chance, the send her back chance, and all of that. And so all of a sudden it went from something where the Democrats should have been on the losing side of this, that the Republicans ended up being on the losing side of this, and it's because of
Good point.
the actions that were taken and the way that they were spoken about, and which I think was inappropriate. And so I ran to this quote. I actually had it saved for some completely other reason, but I thought it was completely applicable. And it says, I don't even know who did it, but I found it. And it says, it is the moral responsibility of reasonable conservatives to disassociate themselves from radical members of their party. And when I read that, I thought, as the Tampa Bay Young Republicans, what we should be doing at a time like this, where you have a mob of people like chanting, send her back to a person, and I'm going to stop myself here because I know Republicans will get mad at me for saying this type of stuff.
No,
but,
it is a historically racist comment that's been documented for 200 years.
But
Yeah.
But what I'll say is that these I don't agree with anything these congresswomen do. I think that Rashida Tlaib is probably our worst member of Congress. Let me just say that right now. But when you see that type of mob mentality of people screaming that type of stuff, that's I get frustrated when my friends will come to me and say, like, how are you part of the Republican Party? They're so bigoted and they're so racist and they're this and that, and I have to sit there and go, no, they're not. I was like, that's not how we all think. And then something like this happens, and I think it's our responsibility as what I consider the reasonable side of this party to look at that and say and condemn this when it happens. And that's not this is the bad side of our party, and we should not be pushing ourselves to that side of the party. And I just think it's important for us to take a stand as the Tampa Bay Young Republicans to basically say that this was wrong. I don't agree with the way that people are handling the situation, and I don't think it's appropriate for people to want citizens of this country, especially if they were born here, to leave the country. And I think that is the type of xenophobia that comes along with what everybody complains, and people have made the assumptions, and they use this type of thing against all of the other policies that we have, and it is not a good look for our party.
But do you think that the people in that room are xenophobic? Like, is that what you're saying, or that they're all racist? I mean, do we say that every time someone says "lock her up" that
I didn't realize how sensitive of a comment that was until I
feminist?
researched it after he tweeted it.
So I don't think that
know
everybody
that.
in a crowd, it's a mob mentality type situation. You have a couple people who I'm gonna say I just don't think that's just not the appropriate response to the situation. You can beat them at the polls. You can beat them and when you argue with them, you can beat them on Twitter. You can do all these different things with facts and logic and a reasonable argument. But what you cannot do is you cannot
stoop to their level.
It's not stooping to their level as much as it's attacking something that because they're different. And it's America's great because we have all of these different cultures that come together and have different ideas. But what happened here was not a good look for our party, and it was a bad moment in
No, I think
but
we
he
can all
condemned it the next day, though.
He did
and
condemn it the next day.
But he said he did it right away, and he didn't do it right away. Like, dude,
he did walk it back the
sometimes
following
I'm
day.
like, dude,
But that's
like,
scary.
did
Though.
walk
Like,
it back.
if I'm on stage and I have a crowd chanting something that like I
Like,
don't
what
agree
do
with,
you
like I
do?
stop.
Yeah.
You stop them. You use crowd control and you say like, guys, that's a lot. You know, he did that when they did chant "lock her up" after the election,
Yeah.
and he's like, guys, there's no more of that. I want already. You know, that's
But again,
that's
that's
good
also
crowd control.
But that's also him rolling that verbiage out, figuring out if that's working. It's not working, so he had to roll it. So he had to walk it back. Do I think everyone in that crowd was xenophobic and was really? They were just hyped up, and I do agree it's the mob mentality that occurred. But it's also then. It wasn't even the mob mentality because it's not like they went out moments
They
later.
didn't go out and
they
beat
didn't
her
go
up
out
or
and
anything.
burn the
Yeah.
city down.
That is.
And then you have those hoax of people saying, "Oh, someone told me to go back home in the middle of Publix when I was trying to
that
check
was-
out."
she went back
And
on her
that
word
was-
Yeah, and
2
she went back
hours
on her
later.
road.
Yeah, that's totally different.
But that's
But this
because
stuff
people
happens
are
all the
trying to
time.
say that they're trying to.
The left won't take action on the bad parts of their party, and the right
Yes.
aren't taking action on the bad parts of their party, and it's forcing everybody independent. People don't want anything to do with either party now, and they think that
This
we're
is all a
both,
very good point, Jake.
we're all completely irresponsible, you know, in what we're doing, and so that's why you have these completely increased numbers of independent voters, and it's like, no, come back to our party. We're reasonable people. Like
Yeah.
there's we disagree on certain policies and everything, but this faction of the party does not represent the party
rest
as a
of
whole.
it, yeah.
That's
And
really my point
Antifa
is.
doesn't represent that part of the Democrat Party.
But they need to take the time to say that.
But
And-
they
and
don't.
Well, they
Well,
don't.
and-
But that's why we can step up and have some sort of moral high ground against that's usually the
I'm gonna
Democratic
need
side.
you to not break when you say that.
I know, but
Some-
so
we
you need-
we should have a moral high ground. The
We
media
can.
should also cover comments by Tlaib, like we're going to impeach the
I-
mother effer, in an equal
agree.
amount of time on the air, and I'm sure you agree.
I agree,
but
yeah.
that I think is what frustrates the people that start chanting.
Mm-hmm.
Is that she says we're going to impeach the mother effer, and they show it in a way like it's going to be motivating to the voters, and then he says go back to your country, and it's like he's this horrible human.
Yeah.
Which the tweets sometimes get a little over the top and inappropriate. And sometimes I've wondered, what if he just did all the amazing things that he's done,
And
but
not
did none of the
tweeted?
angry tweeting and the name calling? There are people that will respond, then he wouldn't have won. It's that personality that is the reason Hillary isn't our president, thank
Yeah.
the dear Lord. But what if he only did all the great things and behaved himself? What if we had that combination? I don't know if that exists.
I don't know if he
I
can
don't
behave
think that
himself
exists.
and
don't
get
thi-
everything done.
I don't
'cause
think they would.
that's part of it.
Yeah, I don't think they would still not give him the respect of any kind whatsoever
Yeah.
because he has an R in front of his name.
Right.
I think they are
Good point.
so up. I remember when Obama won the first time and then the second time, and people were talking about there will never be another Republican president ever.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself,
Lots of people
that
did
is
say
such a
that.
ridiculous comment to make because you say the pendulum always swings.
Mm-hmm.
The history of the last 44 presidents show that it constantly swings. The country has been in far dire situation economically, politically, and socially than it is right now. We are living in one of the most prosperous, safest countries in the world
We're living,
at any
we
time
don't talk
in
about
history.
that enough, and I this is actually one of my biggest points. This is like a life point that I bring up to my friends in like casual conversation. Is that we are living in the greatest time in history to possibly live. We are living in the most prosperous and economic time, and I think that people have no idea that that's happening because they spend too much time listening to the news and they spend too much time listening to and seeing all the bad in the world. But
Well,
we
and they
are-
weren't
we-
affected by the bad times either. This whole generation we have no concept of
Yeah.
not having everything that we
Agreed.
want.
Yeah.
We've never had to stand in a line that we couldn't buy a ticket out of the line, right?
Yeah.
Like we've never had to wait for bread
we
or
have
milk or
watches
be
now
distributed
where
everything.
we don't even have to wait in line at the amusement park.
Yeah, for real. Here you go. You know, I
You don't
mean,
have to go to the store for anything. It'll come to your front
it's
door.
delivered,
I
yeah.
mean, it's insane.
I mean,
we
we-
live in a world where we have completely forgotten
Yeah.
what our
In a
grandparents
country.
went through.
And we have
Yeah.
touched this topic a few times, talking about what happens when scarcity is no longer a thing in the Western world, and what happens to society when there's no longer the idea of struggling. Because to go again, we survived a huge economic crash just a few years, like a decade ago, and look at where we're at now. Cycles will come and go, and the economy will go up and go down, but we're never going to have another situation where we lose 30%,
Well, I think
40%.
that's a good
I don't know,
transition.
we
Do you want to talk about the economy situation right now?
Yeah.
What's going on with the
Oh my gosh, I love the Fed and the increase of the
You're
debt
the first
ceiling.
person to say I love the Fed.
I do.
Love the-
I think
You're
the
not
federal
because you hate Bitcoin.
Oh,
We should probably talk
you
about
know.
Bitcoin.
Let's
at some
talk
point.
about that.
I
that
just bought some Bitcoin not too long ago.
really?
Why are
I
you
did.
buying
Tell me why it's
Bitcoin?
I'm
horrible.
so
Well-
proud of you, Kate. I'm so proud of you.
Why should? Okay.
Because it's insurance.
To
Insurance.
what?
But when
for
it
what?
explodes, I'm not the only poor person left without $1 million.
You know what's insurance? Honestly, gold. If that's what you
That's-
want to play, that's the play. The thing is, when it comes to cryptocurrency, it's the
It's
concept.
gone up 17% this year.
Yeah, that's fine. It also went down
look at it daily.
It also went down 42% last year. So like, it is what it is. But
And
the-
7,000% since its inception. So if I had
Because
bought
it was
$100,
worth zero when it
There
was
are only-
invented.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
There are only, I will tell you this: there are only 2 months in the entire history of Bitcoin that if you bought it, you would be down. For the other 5 years or so of its existence, you were up, and you were up a lot.
There are entire economists
Keep going.
that are not listening to this
Keep throwing
podcast
money at it. Keep
that are
throwing
not.
money at
No, do not throw money
Throw
at
money
Bitcoin.
all
Oh, we were just
over
talking
There's-
about.
I do need to add to this
money and
conversation
how
that
we have no
Anibal is my
concept
tax guy.
anymore.
So I probably should listen to the guy that does my
Speaking-
taxes.
Don't get me wrong. There is a tax write-off that we
They-
could do for
they
Bitcoin.
Oh wait, there's a
Actually,
write-off.
There
if I
is
buy
a
that.
write-off. No,
Well,
if
next
you
year I'll add
lose,
that.
that's why it's so
Oh,
bad.
yeah.
Because so many people lost money when they were in Bitcoin.
Well, actually,
that the tax was written that allows you to write that off for losses.
I'm gonna throw you.
We'll talk later.
I'm gonna throw you a bone though, and move
You're
you
not
into.
throwing me a
No,
bone.
no, no,
It's
I-
simple economics.
But I'm not throwing you a
That
bone.
fake
but I'm
money
gonna
is
throw
fake
you.
money.
I'm gonna throw you.
It's like Venmo.
I'm gonna throw you into the next topic. So a lot of people that with the cryptocurrency situation, they took the time with all the loopholes and things that are going on. There's a huge community down in Puerto Rico now, and that's one of the richest parts of Puerto Rico is this cryptocurrency community that kind of lives down there. But there's a ton of stuff going on in Puerto Rico, Anibal. So do you want to start hitting on one of Anibal's
Good
attic?
segue, Jake.
Ooh.
You managed to connect
That's good.
Bitcoin with
Dots
That's a
over
that's
here.
a
Puerto
loss.
Rico?
That's a plus
Wow,
3 minutes
that's
right
why
there.
you are in charge.
That's right.
I'm hosting this week, guys.
Sorry, Johnny.
Boom. Mic drop.
Oh,
So,
we probably should talk about Johnny. You totally skipped over Johnny.
No,
I
it
thought you
wasn't-
did that
weird.
intentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
we were gonna do it at the end.
Okay, fine. All right, fine. We'll move.
We'll keep on
It's a
talking.
tease.
Just kick-
It's a
sorry,
tease.
Johnny. We're just kicking you to the end of this show.
It's not like he's watching or anything.
I think he is watching.
I'm sure he's
Hi,
watching.
Johnny.
Yeah, he can't turn
I
his head.
see you.
He can't turn his head with the
Is he
brace.
texting you directions?
Ooh.
All right, so go ahead. Go on to Puerto Rico. That we're gonna give. Do you have the Anibal's attic graphic that we have? Because we have a new.
Do we have an Anibal's attic?
I don't know
Yeah,
why
it
we.
goes on his
It's a
head.
little,
Yes.
it's a little house that goes over his head. No?
Okay, good.
We don't have that.
So
All right.
this week in international news, Puerto Rico finally fell apart after 2 weeks.
Didn't really fall apart though.
No,
it
it's-
didn't really fall apart.
It's like me going to Greece thinking I can buy an island for $100 during the economic collapse.
Can we not?
I almost did.
I'm just
Okay,
kidding.
moving on from there.
British accent. There. You're going to London too much.
So the current governor is scheduled to vacate his office August 2nd, which I feel is adequate for what has been going on. He has been governor for I think maybe less than half of his term. He is by all sakes like the Canadian version of the pretty boy in office. He grew up in the Capitol building.
You mean he's the Puerto Rican version?
He's the Puerto Rican version of Justin Trudeau.
Justin Trudeau. Okay.
So way too pretty for politics. I mean,
You
let's
can't
all.
be too
I
pretty
didn't think
for
he was that
politics.
pretty.
Yes,
Hold
he's
on.
just
No,
he's
you
too
can't.
pretty.
You can't be
You
too
can't be
pretty.
too pretty for politics, a
possible.
news anchor, or an athlete.
Yeah, but those are all really different because
You can be too pretty to be an athlete because
No, you can't.
that
they
gets
make
messed
comments
up.
all the
No.
time
Depends
that
what kind of
politics
Yeah.
is
like
the
a swimmer's okay.
Politics
Adam
is the
Scott?
theater for not very pleasant looking people. So at the end of the day, he
It'd be a lot better if everybody was really good looking though.
for you. So
I would pay a lot more attention.
I will tell you right now. that
Single
C-SPAN,
senators.
C-SPAN turns into a dating show.
If I could swipe to vote,
Can you imagine?
We are this
Think
close
about
from
how many
swipe
more
to vote,
people
by
would
the way.
No,
vote.
that is the
Yeah.
worst thing we could possibly
this close
do.
to
I believe
Yes.
it.
We're this
We
close
shouldn't.
To, we're this close to left, right on.
We
I would
should not.
get out and
Before
get out
we
the
die.
vote if it was swiping.
Before
If
we die,
just-
I think that would be the worst thing for
A
the
face,
Republic.
a little bio,
For the Republic, it would be the
likes
worst
and
thing.
dislikes.
Anyways,
Puerto
back to
Rico.
Puerto Rico. So
maybe like a rating of other women they've dated before.
So
So
Yes.
the
stars.
island has been in a free fall for years,
He is
especially
really
after
good-looking.
multiple scandals when it comes to the budget, multiple resignations, and the back-to-back hurricanes that hit the island
Google
just
Puerto
a few
Rico
years
governor.
ago. And so what's happened now? Stop! I can't deal with you right now. So what's happened now is there was something called the WikiLeaks, where the governor and the majority of his cabinet minute were going back and forth in like a WhatsApp page, basically.
Telegram, which is
no, the
also a
Telegram.
cryptocurrency thing, by the way.
The Telegram is the newspaper that broke the story.
No, the Telegram. No, it's a Telegram channel.
Moving on. Talking, disrespecting women, ridiculing gay people, and then mocking the victims of Hurricane Maria. So as soon as that broke, everyone got really upset, got pissed off. Some of the largest rallies to get him out occurred. He did a Facebook message where he said he wasn't going to do it. He was going to finish his term but not seek. That didn't play well at all. Everyone wanted him out. He got out. And now there's a question about who's going to become governor, because at the moment, the people that would have been the next person in line, like in our system, it's like vice president, then whoever is in charge of the House, and it keeps on going down.
Didn't he also not give out the money they received for the hurricane?
So
They've been holding back money and supplies.
So the president
the end of the
That's the last
putting
straw.
in
April.
contracts that are their friends' contracts.
In
and stuff
April,
like
the president tweets about how bad it is when it comes to the corruption in Puerto Rico, and everyone gets upset because President Trump is being
Said
racist
something
because
about
he's
brown
talking
people,
about
yeah.
brown people.
See, but I
and
think
all
that-
of a
and
sudden,
this is where I think it's-
and then he was right the whole time.
Well, see, this
They've
of
been
the
hoarding
millions
this-
of dollars
And by
that
the way,
have been out.
But this goes back to why I'm so upset about the send her back stuff, because that is a situation where I don't think he's being racist. I think he's being reasonable. About
But everyone
what's
said
happening.
he was being
I
racist.
know, but they say
Baltimore,
that
everyone
because-
says he's being
When
racist.
everything's racist, nothing's
Nothing's
racist.
racist.
and
Which
that's
is a
but
very
that-
scary
which I agree
thing.
with, and that's why I think it's. But we should never give them that. Let me go back. I'm putting us back, but that's why we should never
You're
give
losing
them
your
these
3 minutes.
situations. We should never be giving them those situations with the center back, which things that I consider to be not appropriate for the president to say.
I just want to say
But
Trump didn't really give that moment back to them. That was the crowd. I mean, I don't think that he really
it
gave that
breeds it.
back. And
It breeds it, yes, but it does. Have to agree with Jodie. I didn't think of it as a racist thing. In my mind, it was the connection.
I don't think-
if you don't like it, then go somewhere else.
even if you're
It was
not
that
going like
conversation.
home, but you're just leaving Congress, that's really how I kind of think about it. Like, go back to Michigan then and do what you're doing over there.
Well,
He
Right,
never said
right.
their names either.
No,
They called
they
themselves
everyone
out.
just assumed.
Yeah.
They
by
called
the way,
themselves out.
This is why I'll say the Baltimore comments are interesting because.
Oh, we're just cutting Puerto Rico out. Like, all of a
Okay, did
sudden?
we cut Puerto Rico out? I'm
We
sorry.
gotta
finish
let
Puerto
them-
Rico.
we gotta-
Okay.
yeah,
So we
because
interrupted-
nobody's
so
in
we
charge in
interrupted
Puerto
and
So
you
Rico.
at the moment, there's no one in charge. The budget deficit in regards to into what's happening in Puerto Rico, I think, is at $60 billion. Unelected individuals that are cutting pensions, that are cutting public services. But that's what happens if you have a debt. Like, this is what happens when you take mommy's credit card and you just spend all the whole time around, and then the bill comes and you don't know, oh, I'm not going to pay it. I don't know how to pay it. Well, someone has to pay it. It's going to get paid. So you're going to have to cut and cut and cut, and then people are getting upset.
Or you have another depression.
Oh, you have another. Well, you're in depression because
Already,
of it. So
yeah.
now Puerto Rico is 11% unemployment rate, one of the highest in. It's not in the United States because they're technically not a state. As a whole other kind of
It's very high.
conversation.
Is it?
However, 44% of people in Puerto Rico live in poverty, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Since 2017 through 2018, the population has dropped 3.9% because they're allowed to leave the country and become American citizens here in the United States. So it's a bad situation altogether. And right now, I think the next person in line, if Wanda doesn't take it, who's the Justice Secretary, is the Education Secretary, who might
What?
become governor. And then in the back of my mind, playing the scenario, I'm like, what is this, an episode of Battlestar Galactica?
I was
Where's the
actually thinking
last-
Lord of the Flies.
The last person that's actually that's legitimate inside the government is the Secretary of Education. Then, just screw it all over. Let them become their own country and figure it all
No,
out.
so this is actually I joked about this a little bit with you guys beforehand, but we actually have people that are pretty high up in Florida politics, so maybe they're listening that do listen to this show, and can we I don't want to say annex. Annex is a bad word, but can we incorporate Puerto Rico into the state
Into
of Florida?
Florida.
Like
Just the way-
floating that out there. Like if the governor is listening to me, I have done no research into this idea
Gov.
at all.
Hey, Gov. Oh,
Hey,
we love our
we love
governor.
you, DeSantis.
You're doing a
I
great
think
job.
Been in your
So
living
Love it.
room.
But could we?
Yes, we have.
But could we? Because
Non-stalker.
everyone talks about giving Puerto Rico statehood. They talk about adding them as a new state, so the
It
federal
makes
government's
sense.
dealing. So but
Just
could
make
Florida,
them their
could
own
Florida
county
be
in
their own
Florida.
county? I mean, it's very. We are literally shouldering almost all of the people coming from that country
Anyways.
to Orlando and South Florida anyway. So I mean, is it a crazy idea? I'm just throwing it out there. Can Florida make a campaign to buy Puerto Rico?
No,
You be the mayor.
That's not. No, that's not.
Smile.
That's not the first step.
I don't know.
If we want to have a legitimate,
So many things just
don't get
went
me
through
wrong.
my mind.
I love the
about
idea.
that.
I love the idea. I thought
All inappropriate
I
to
was
say.
at the luncheon when Pam Ioria made the comment of how she would love the day when she gets to annex St. Pete. So. It was the best comment I had ever heard in my life. However, if we want to have a real conversation about this, the first step that we do is we allow, and I say this to the senators and to the governor, if you can make this happen, that you remove the Jones Act in regards to shipping into Puerto Rico. That's the reason why everything is so expensive there, because under that provision,
What's the Jones Act?
all shipping containers have to go from the so if it's leaving Johannesburg, it has to hit the United States on a U.S. ship and then go to Puerto Rico.
That
so
sounds
right there,
stupid.
exactly. So you're increasing.
Who put that into account? A Democrat?
About 100 years ago is when that happened during the Spanish-American War.
Yeah,
maybe a Democrat. Honestly,
I don't. Yeah,
Let's look that up.
I wouldn't be.
I bet it's a Democrat.
What am I looking at?
Jodie, get on it.
But it's a huge. It's one of those things that you look at and you're like, why hasn't this just gone and been changed yet? Because there's a rule here that makes no sense, and you feel bad for the people of Puerto Rico here because they're the ones that are really like they're stuck on an island. They have no say in our government. They have no say in a lot of the other things that are going on with them. And then we've got these crazy laws that are international laws that really keep this entire country down. So it's like we should just figure it out, guys. Like I don't know what we're doing.
But that's the first step. The
It
second
doesn't only affect Puerto Rico either. It's also
Oh,
Hawaii,
yeah, it affects
Alaska
all other,
as
like,
well.
all the large
Yeah.
ones. But Hawaii and Alaska are states in that
Someone's
regard.
making money off it. Some shipping company.
Oh,
Because
plenty of
everything's so expensive in Alaska and Hawaii. That's why?
That's partially why.
Part
You still
of
have to
it.
get.
Also, you're in the middle of the ocean.
But Puerto Rico's not farther than.
But does stuff
than-
really need
than
to
a
be
lot
that
of things.
expensive?
No, and so I think that would be the first step into making actual legitimate change. Again, Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Rick Scott, these are tangible things that can be done. President Trump, these are tangible things that can be done to ease the suffering of that nation without it becoming more corrupt. Because then that opens competition, and competition allows for larger inclusion into
Which is why I think it was done by a Democrat.
By the way, Derek texted me and said that Republicans put the Jones Act in.
It's
Man!
Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah. But it was also 100 years ago.
Thanks, Derek.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I
Derek.
appreciate that we people that watch our show live.
Thanks for watching, Derek.
watching,
Yeah.
No, Derek's our biggest fan.
No, my grandmother is. Hi, Grandma.
I think the wife is definitely not watching.
No, I know.
She's probably just watching it right now.
So do we have any more on Puerto Rico before
No, I
take
mean
away
that
from
leads
Evil's
into the
attic?
bigger conversation about in regards to the budget and having that situation. I mean, I like the idea of the United States Florida buying an island.
I'm just making that up, by the way. I have no like.
I do wanna get this-
Why would you make that up
4
and then bring
minutes
this
to
up
8.
into the conversation?
Because I think it's a fun conversation to have. So we're doing on the podcast.
Johnny and say,
Okay.
4
So-
minutes left.
Oh no, so I guess so that talks about the debt ceiling, but we could talk about that another time in regards to the Federal Reserve cutting rates and us increasing the debt ceiling, which I completely agree with. I know I'm not being a good Republican when I say that out
You're
loud.
being a bad everything right now.
No, first of all, I'm being an adult, making sure we pay our bills. Don't get me wrong.
Hashtag adulting.
Calling the credit card company asking for an increase in your spending. Yes,
okay.
it's okay if you're spending that to keep the lights on.
All right, I'm going to do this in under 30 seconds. This is incredible to me. This is incredible to me that we as a country have for 20 years run up what are we at, 27 trillion or something like that? Do you know what the debt is currently at?
It's a little bit of more than the GDP development of the country. Yes.
Okay, so it's like 22 trillion. There's no difference at this point, but 27 trillion. And we just keep raising the debt ceiling. No one's talking about it. No one's doing anything about it. And it's like, it's nuts. Like I own a business. Like if I went to people who like invested in my business and said to them every single year, yeah, we're $100,000 in the red. Next year, we're going to be $200,000 in the red.
It's called Silicon Valley with all these unicorns that
keep
made
going,
no
and
money
just keep
whatsoever.
going, and just keep
Amazon
going.
was running in the red for
but
years. Tesla is still running in the reds for years.
That's like 3 to 5 years. This is like 20 years. It's okay for a couple years.
It's not okay for a couple years.
20 years.
We are literally the only good thing running in the world at the moment.
Is our debt ceiling?
No, is our economy and making sure that people get paid and bills happen. What happens when the United States has a hiccup? The world goes into recession and we move on to the next, I don't know, Krispy Kreme. And that's what happens in the United States.
The point is that our debt is insane right now, and it's going to be something probably pretty drastic to get us out.
I don't think we're ever going to get out. We have become the household that can no longer afford to pay their credit card bills because you put so much
It's very
money
American.
towards it.
a
You
very
put so much
American way
money
of
towards your
looking at
credit
it.
card bills
the,
that you're using
you know what the same
cash,
conversation is
and
when it
it's
comes to
gone
it's being
now.
very American? What are you gonna do about it? What China's gonna invade us? What the world is
That
gonna
is-
sell us not? The
we
world's
are-
gonna not use our bonds and use us as the American. Everything.
I mean,
is
what
being
happens
made.
if we just file bankruptcy as a country?
We
and just
can't
start over?
file bankruptcy as a country.
Doesn't really work
The
out.
That
moment
sounds
we
scary.
file bankruptcy as a country, Russia invades all of Europe and China takes Japan. Like these are the conversations.
Well, it's
we're
can
like the
having.
cut
woman was
spending.
talking about
We
with
can cut
Venezuela.
Where would
last-
you like to cut spending?
Well, it's not popular to say this, but our military and our healthcare and
And
everything
ladies
like
and
that, we've
Constantly.
gentlemen, we
got
have
massive-
had a great.
But we
What-
have.
what
we
was
have
the
I can't
latest?
believe you
Repeat
just
what
said
the
the
lady was
military.
saying.
military.
I could say yes to
but
healthcare.
it's
Cut
not-
healthcare.
But it's not people.
Let some people die and we would save some money.
It's
not-
I'm
And
sorry,
we're
but that's
moving
legit.
away.
But this
We
is
keep people alive too long on
We
machines.
cannot
It's a
use
thing.
that
It
as
is
an
a thing.
argument.
That is not.
We
what
are a
we're-
big tent party.
All right, so guys, so let me go back to my
The views of this person are not shared by the others on the panel. Don't hold them responsible.
Oh my gosh.
We all have a TV by our umbrella. We are just all under
We're
it, and people-
independent.
We're all.
But we are down to our last minute, so let's go ahead and talk.
All I was going to say about the
something
military,
to-
though, it's not. I don't advocate for cutting to military like personnel and stuff like that. But we have an incredible amount of waste in the military, and anybody that is involved with that will tell you that.
But we
So
can't let you
I'm not-
end on cutting the
need
military.
a
We
What's the
support
latest-
our men and women in
Of course
service.
we
Thank
do,
you
but
very
doesn't mean
much
that there's not
for your
excessive amount of
service.
spending.
And we think you should
I
have the
would-
coolest tanks and AKs when you're out there protecting us.
Not even that.
Thank
Just have
you.
the proper body armor. That remember that whole big thing
Yes,
that
the
people
whole
had to
thing
start
with the
fundraising.
earbuds and the
Have you
problems.
seen the
my
thing
gosh.
about the $10,000 coffee cup?
You know why it's cost $10,000?
Because it's a government agency.
No, it's because it's made to ensure that when it does shatter, it shatters into 3 pieces, none of them being edges. The reason why it's $10,000 because it's in a submarine. What happens in submarines? Those things do
It
crazy
doesn't have
things.
a plug. It was first off, it's in an airplane, and second,
Oh,
it's-
because those things don't go around either. There is a logical
All right.
reason. Don't get me wrong.
We're
I
gonna get-
understand.
We
It's-
need to circle
It
back.
It doesn't
around.
make any sense why there's a $10,000 coffee cup, but it does make sense when you're in the military and you're life and death situations.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna leave it at that.
And we're going to talk about life and death
Life and
situations.
death. This is the best segue ever. Johnny Torres is the person that actually
Not a
brought
good
all of us.
segue.
It's a horrible segue.
I'm glad. I hope you
My
can laugh about
gosh.
this, Johnny.
Johnny, we love you to
I know it's
death.
been 3 days since you've been out of the hospital.
You guys are
but-
all over there fighting, and I'm just sitting over here like
But we still
watching
haven't
this
even.
ship
So
sink.
let's let Anibal go.
Let's take a moment, somber moment. Do we have somber like music to like play over?
No, with the Titanic.
How about I'll sing?
So
Go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
no,
No.
so Johnny, we love you. We all feel your loss. You're not being here at the
The loss of
miss
your
you.
car. The loss of his
the
car.
loss of his car.
You're doing a bad job.
I'm
right
doing a
now.
horrible job.
But Johnny
because-
had
Johnny
a
is
car
alive, guys.
accident,
Johnny's
so
alive.
he is just slightly injured. For those of you that don't realize what the hell we're talking
So
about.
we were
right now.
going to we were going to get we were going to do the show last week. We were going to start moving to once a week. But Johnny Torres, who has been our producer and our host and our fearless leader for quite some time now, he got in a pretty bad car accident. He was in the hospital for a few days, I think, and he's got some fairly serious back issues, but largely okay, and is going to come out.
He
You
was
know,
able to walk.
will
He
be
was
back.
able to walk away from the car
Yeah,
accident.
he will
yes.
be able to come back and talk about this, I think, next week or the week after.
When he feels comfortable to be able to talk about it.
But so our thoughts and prayers and everything goes out to Johnny. If you have his number or something, reach out to him if you already haven't, and send him.
He did do a
flowers and-
Facebook Live from
he-
his
he
hospital
did-
bed, so we're not sharing anything.
We're not
that
sharing
he
anything.
hasn't
that's not
already
there. Yeah, he
shared
did.
with
He was.
everyone.
He's responsible. He full
Yeah.
Facebook Lived and Instagram Live during the hospital
Like from the
situation. so-
hospital bed.
But
Use.
but we'll welcome him back to the show when we come back. That was supposed to be at the beginning of the show, by the way, Johnny. I'm going to blame Anibal for just skipping right over it and going into.
Whoa!
No,
You're
we're
the
saying-
host of this whole conversation.
And you
also,
were like, I'm going to handle Johnny's thing, guys. I
Yes.
got
We
this.
miss
and
you,
then
Johnny.
You basically pronounced him dead by accident.
First of all, did you see the really bad editing of that gurney situation? I don't know if it was green screened or not in regards to the hospital situation, seeing it all go.
we
I don't
have
know,
a
Johnny. I
reputation-
love you to death, but I'm gonna need to see evidence. I don't know. Moon landing.
We're going to have
Because
a
Facebook
terrible.
Live's not enough.
Facebook Live is not.
We have spent way too much time as Republicans on the internet, where we question everything that comes up out now, and we're like,
It's all
"That's
fake
We're not
news.
sure
This is
this is
true.
fake. This is fake news.
It's
This is
all
fake
fake
news."
I'm
news.
gonna need
And
to.
we're questioning Johnny whether he
We are going to
got in an
open
accident.
investigations.
It's going to be at least 2 years long.
Sign it off.
So,
30 indictments, all Russians.
all right,
All
what were we
Russians.
talking about now? Where are we going?
We're just
I'm
gonna
supposed
sign
host
off
this.
It was-
and,
it was
and
the
just say
best
thank you for
transition.
joining us.
No, we hit
done.
an hour.
We've
hit an
been
hour.
done for 3 minutes.
Yeah, that was the whole purpose.
No,
of this.
we've been done for 1 minute. All right, guys. So
3 minutes.
all right, 3 minutes. All right.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna couple of announcements then right before we go. We are gonna try and move this show to once a week, 7 p.m. on
Ish.
7 p.m. ish. So don't hold us to that. Might be 7:30 on Monday nights. So please keep tuning in. Follow us on Facebook at The Yard Sign. Follow us on Facebook at Tampa Young Republicans.
YouTube.
We are on YouTube now too. Apparently at The Yard Sign.
Yep.
Yes, maybe.
I would also like to say what I learned at last week's meeting about Venezuela
Oh, it
was
was amazing.
eye-opening and mind-blowing, and I think we Facebook Lived it.
Yes.
So I think maybe she spoke for like 45 minutes. So if you're interested to go to the TBYR page and just to like listen to that video while you drive in the car like you would a podcast, I mean, what she had to say was so eye-opening and so powerful and all information that I knew absolutely nothing about.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. If you didn't take the time to watch it, we had a couple people complain about the fact that like we even talked about it. So
Which makes no sense.
That we talked about Venezuela?
yeah,
Why?
like
Exactly.
So I hope that they're watching this too, because I genuinely think that some of the people
God
that comment
forbid we
stuff
have
like
a
that are
conversation.
ridiculous. But
That's the extreme right you were
that's
talking
the
about.
extreme right that I'm talking about. That I'm like I understand. Anyway, so that's one thing. We don't have a meeting currently scheduled coming up. We'll talk more about that on a further podcast. I want to give a thank you to David Luce if he's watching, because he put me on to the One Small Step.
Me too.
And did you do
I was
it as well?
last week.
You did it
Yeah.
as well?
Wednesday.
Yeah, so I guess Cassie has spent a lot of time in front of a microphone recently. She is getting all kinds of airtime.
I missed my calling.
Exactly. And so, I guess me and Cassie both got to do the One Small Step program. We're going to thank David Luce for that.
Yeah.
If you don't know what that is, it's a program that NPR is going to do, and they're going to cut it all together. We'll give you the links to it if you do want to watch that at some point. Conversations between people with different political backgrounds and political views. And it's actually going to get stored in the Library of Congress. So, guys, we made the Library of Congress, and which is kind of crazy. And so I'll let you guys know about when that comes out. Catch us on TV randomly, I guess, when Cassie gets another offer to get on to Channel 10 or anything like that.
A lot of us
And
are
then-
on TV quite often, actually.
Yeah, I don't know how it keeps happening.
I don't know. We have different opinions, I guess.
And let's thank that Venezuelan lady by name. What was her name? She was great. Irma?
Norma.
Norma.
Amazing.
Yeah, from Casa. So thank you
Casa
to
Venezuela.
Casa Venezuela from Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
You guys did an excellent job.
Oh,
and
David said, glad you enjoyed it.
we are
great.
going to. Oh, thank you. He's watching.
Hi, David.
So I want to. So I thank you guys all. If you are interested in getting more involved with what we're doing here, come out to a Tampa Young Republicans meeting. Message us on the Facebook of Tampa Young Republicans, and also if you want to get more involved with the podcast, let us know as well. And you have something else?
One last announcement. It is 50 days until the Area 51 situation. Remember, it's August 30th. Look at your calendars and watch the fireworks.
And I think we're going to have a couple bets to figure
Oh,
out
we
whether-
did bet on how many people would get injured.
Yeah, so we have a
Injured,
few.
killed, arrested.
We have a few things going on around the Area 51. If you didn't go back, watch that one. Go watch all of our stuff. And the show is only going to continue to get better every single week and more organized and
I need you
more.
to hold
I
your
need you to
face.
just stop.
I'm very. I mean, look at the camera. Our show is going to get so professional that you guys are going to get blown away. Just give us a week. So that's
Or
it.
Maybe two.
maybe two.
Maybe two.
All right, guys. I appreciate it. We're signing off now. Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
We gotta all learn to keep ourselves together.
You.